There is a moment in football that never makes it into the highlights package. It happens after the final whistle goes, when the cameras are still on but nobody is pointed at the right thing. It is the moment a player stops moving, stops competing, and just stands there on the grass while the opposition runs past him celebrating. That moment belonged to Portugal, and the man standing in the center of it had spent the best part of 20 years trying to reach exactly the position he was standing in, only to watch it finish like this. This was not the story anyone had written for this World Cup. Portugal showed up in 2026 with a group of players that genuinely looked like they had been put together for a run at this. Fresh enough to cover the ground, experienced enough to not panic when things got tight. A generation that had spent years waiting for a real shot at the biggest stage the sport has, and came into this tournament actually believing it was going to happen this time. They got through the group stage without a defeat. They dealt with the pressure of the knockout rounds the way sides with genuine belief deal with pressure, not without difficulty, but with the kind of stubbornness that makes you feel like they have something in them that can carry them all the way. Then they came up against Spain. Spain did not walk into this World Cup carrying the same weight of expectation. They were not the team the cameras kept drifting toward in training, or the side that owned the press conferences before the tournament started. They were just quietly very good at something Portugal had no real answer for. Spain suffocate opposition, not by running faster, not by hitting harder, not through one player picking the ball up and doing something that changes a match in a handful of seconds. They do it by making you wait. By playing a brand of football that looks completely harmless right up until the moment it does not look harmless at all. They keep possession. They press the second they give it away. They make you chase for the entire 90 minutes while they do it without ever looking like they are working particularly hard. And by the point Portugal started to understand what was actually being done to them, there was nothing left in the tank to change it. The match itself carried a feeling that was difficult to put a name to. Portugal were not bad. That is the bit that stings most. They were set up properly, they worked hard, they had moments where they could have hurt Spain. But Spain just kept finding ways to make things difficult again. Every time Portugal managed to get a foothold, Spain took it back. The goal that settled it did not come from a defensive mistake. It did not come from one brilliant individual doing something nobody else could. It came from exactly the kind of move Spain had been quietly building toward since the first minute. A passing sequence put together with the kind of precision and patience that by the time the ball went in, Portugal were out of answers and out of legs to find one. One goal, that was it. One goal that felt like it summed up everything that had taken place in the 87 minutes before it. What no stat line tells you is what the inside of that dressing room was like when it was over. A generation of players who had put everything into 4 years of work, some of them considerably more than that, sitting in quiet with the reality settling in that it was finished. Not because they were not good enough on paper, not because the preparation had let them down, but because football does not work from paper. It works from what happens across those specific 90 minutes on that specific surface in front of that specific crowd. On that day, Spain were better. Not by a distance. But in a knockout match at a World Cup, distance does not come into it. Better is all that is required. For the players who had been in this position before without winning, this one landed differently. The ones who knew, before the referee had even brought the whistle to his mouth, that this was most likely their last genuine shot at this stage of this competition, understood what that meant before anyone had to say it out loud. There is a particular kind of hurt that comes with going out of a World Cup that does not show up when you lose anywhere else in football. A club comes back the following season. A national side sits and waits 4 years. And 4 years in a professional footballer's life is not the same 4 years it is for the rest of us. It is the gap between being the player who starts and being the player who watches someone younger pull on the shirt you spent your career building a case to wear. Portugal did not just lose a football match that day. They lost time. And in this sport, time is the one thing that does not come back to you. Spain went through, Portugal went home. And somewhere inside that Portuguese dressing room, in the quiet after everything had stopped, A group of players sat with the particular heaviness of knowing they had been good enough to genuinely believe. Just not good enough on the one day it mattered. That is the hardest thing this sport does to people. It lets you believe. It gives you every reason to think your moment has arrived. And then on some Tuesday or Wednesday night, in one match off one goal, it lets you know that it had not. Spain finished Portugal's World Cup. But what Spain actually finished was the belief that had been growing inside that squad for years. And that is the part that takes the longest to rebuild. If you have ever watched your side go out of a tournament and sat with that particular silence afterwards, you already know exactly what that room felt like. Leave it below in the comments. And if you want to keep seeing the real stories that sit behind the biggest moments in this sport, subscribe. New video every single day. Because the moments that never make the highlights are always the ones that are actually worth talking about.